we learned in the great financial crisis that the first thing that companies will try and cut is marketing. And this is true of mature companies and of startups. Marketing is actually something that can get higher returns at a time when other people aren't spending on it. And there's opportunities to capture share when people are retreating or perhaps like exiting your markets. That doesn't mean you keep doing your old marketing, but you understand again, hey, what's the new value proposition? What are the marketing dollars we need to spend? Assuming you have a concept of what ROI looks like, and you can still acquire customers at an attractive price.
And we're back for another episode of the Startup Hustle. This is your host, Matt Watson. Very excited to be joined today by Vijay Rajendran, who is the coach and CEO of Startup System. He helps advise other startup founders that are struggling and trying to grow and do different things. He's also an advisor, investor, so you can definitely check him out. We'll have a link to his show notes, we'll have a link to his website and everything in the show notes. So today we're going to be talking about startup resilience, fundraising, all sorts of different things that he has experience with. He has a great book about fundraising coming out as well. Before we get started, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by Fullscale. If you need to hire software developers, you got stuff to do today. Economy is tough, it's tight. Need to get higher developers at a lower cost. Check us out at fullscale.io. We have over 300 software developers working for dozens of startups and scale-ups and tech companies. Vijay, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, man. It's great to be here.
So about resilience, I was struggling today. I don't know why. I don't know if I'm feeling very resilient today, and it's a tough tech market out there. You're helping a lot of startups. What is the market like out there? What are you hearing?
I'm based here in the San Francisco Bay Area. It is on the surface, humming as big tech company stocks keep, breaking through the ceiling, and there's a lot of talk about AI. And yet, for so many founders and so many startups, there's a real struggle. And that real struggle is the fact that, they're dealing with economic uncertainty. It is taking longer for them to fundraise. They face, higher costs. It could be everything from compute to, other things that come with raising a business. And so, there's a lot of pressure on people. And that is something that I think is acutely relevant now. That being said, there are things that we can do for ourselves, for our companies, for the people around us that can help us get through what is an extremely difficult period.
Do you feel like now is a good time to be a bootstrap company that can just kind of, be cash flow positive and just hold on and weather the storm?
Being cash flow positive is always in fashion. It sometimes isn't, what everybody wants, but I think it is definitely something that people are realizing. In the last couple of years, we've heard a lot of people talk about, finding the path to profitability, finding the way to get, your sea legs in a very choppy storm. But there are folks who don't need to raise money, but they may not have questioned the assumption that they need to fundraise, when in fact, they can be in control of their destiny. They can certainly own more of their business, and they can grow at a rate which is feasible and sustainable, as opposed to, venture scale, where maybe you're trying to 10x the company, every 24 to 36 months, which is awesome, and in a place where, certainly I've played for a long time, but, that's not what everybody has to do.
Well, so I if you're not subscribed to the Startup Hustle News, my weekly newsletter, you should subscribe at startuphustlenews.com. And actually, on the day that we're recording this, my article was about the danger of raising too much capital and maybe, the pitfalls that come with that. And one of the great quotes from that was that you need to raise when it's irresponsible not to raise money. And to some degree right now, it might be irresponsible to raise money. And the reason I say that is, if we're not in a market where companies are spending a lot of money and there's a lot of growth out there, it'd be hard to raise a lot of capital and think, hey, we're going to grow, 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 because that is not going to happen. Like, a lot of companies are not spending a lot of money. They don't have a lot of budget. Now, if you're in just the right market segment, of course, there will always be high growth, outliers, maybe if you're in AI or something right now, but general purpose, like kind of business right now, I don't know that now would be the time to raise a bunch of money and say, we're going to go grow, 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 grow. What do you think?
It is true that there are a lot of people paring back, cutting back, trying to think about how do we contain costs. And what we've seen with SaaS in the last few years is people signed up for all these subscriptions, and now you see financial controls or technology spend and oversight asking some critical questions in terms of like, well, why do we have subscriptions to all these things? So I think there are definitely examples where folks are cutting back the budget, and it's really hard to like get people to sign up for new things. That being said, if your value proposition is really on the side of helping people get more out of their spend, perhaps
Right.
thinking about how they can collapse their fixed costs, then you get a lot of reception from potential customers. So the answer to everything is usually like, well, what do
It
customers
depends.
want? What do customers want to do? If customers are saying like, yes, we want to pull the trigger because we're looking to we're looking to compress our cost structure in some way, and you can help them do that and show quick wins, that's great. Then definitely like lean into that as your value proposition, because those are the painkillers you have to offer.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. If you're a service or a product right now that can help people save money, now is a good time. At full scale, the economy is making it harder for us, but we can save people money on their software development costs. So we're still growing. We're still got new customers almost every week, and things are relatively good for us. But it's harder than before, like
Yeah.
harder than when it's a boom time, right? And actually, my first company, Vin Solutions, took off like a rocket in the 2008-2009 recession for the same
Yeah.
reasons, because we were poised to help we were poised to help car dealers move to online shopping. So, autotrader.com, cars.com, websites, eBay Motors, all this stuff. And to your point earlier, when people are making a lot of money, they don't necessarily think about as much about how they spend it, right? So back then, everybody spent a lot of money on advertising and newspapers and magazines and all these different things. And that all just died. Like, they'd all moved online shopping, and we were in the right place at the right time because we could help them save money and moved online shopping. When that recession hit, we were there at the right time. And I think, as we talk a little bit about resilience today as a startup and as a founder, now is the time to be thinking about that. Like, how can your business be a little more resilient to this economy? And if you have a product that can help people save money, now is a great time to try and position yourself that way.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're trying to be more resilient. And it turns out your customers are too. They're asking, yes, how do I save money? They're also asking questions, kind of like those car dealers back in 2008, right? What is the big replatforming? What is the big like economic uh, kind of event that is going to define the next like decade? And so they're trying to survive in their own way. And so, are you dialed into what their story is? Because your own answer lies in their success. So figuring out how to offer them a message of hope and survival is how you're going to improve and refine your value proposition from business as usual or growth on yesterday's terms to something that is much more about the future, which doesn't have to be pessimistic. Again, it can be positive because you're there to make people's lives better.
So in this kind of market, for the companies that you work with, that you advise, do you see them investing more in sales and marketing at this point, or do you see them pulling back on their investment in sales and marketing and maybe investing a little more in product? Like, now's the time to build for the next big wave when the next bull market comes? Or or are you advising like, hey, you know what, we're going to spend more in sales and marketing because we still got to fight our way through this thing?
We learned in the great financial crisis that the first thing that companies will try and cut is marketing. When in fact, market, and this is true of mature companies and of startups, marketing is actually something that can get higher returns at a time when other people aren't spending on it. And there's opportunities to capture share when people are retreating or perhaps like exiting your markets. And so that's like the lesson, where that doesn't mean you keep doing your old marketing, but you understand again, hey, what's the new value proposition? What are the marketing dollars we need to spend? Assuming you have a concept of what ROI looks like, and you can still acquire customers at an attractive price.
Well, and that's great advice when you think about it, because that's where the strong like survive and continue to thrive. When these smaller companies that don't have the budget and they can't afford to do the marketing, all their marketing budget and spend goes away, right? So all that gets left are these bigger companies that are able to continue to spend, right? And so the little guys are the ones that are going to get starved out.
Yeah. Well, this is where I think founder sales strategy comes into the picture. Like, what is your role as, let's say, the founder of a startup who is going to commit themselves to helping reorient the company and its value proposition, and maybe go into some new industries or verticals in order to sell and to refine your value proposition, maybe introduce pilots and proofs of concepts with enterprise customers, which you have the credibility and authority to do, and those new buyers will be interested in experimenting. Now you're doing something that the big company can't afford to do. That big company can't necessarily afford to go and work with a design partner. But I'm working with startups in, for example, the healthcare and wellness space that are having those conversations because they're saying like, yeah, sure, like you're our design partner. We'll build something very quickly around something that you need to provide, let's say, personalization of care, and then deploy that in a way that people think like, oh wow, this was faster than I thought, less expensive and less risky, and I can compare the before and after. Great, yeah, let's sign up and do this new thing, because then you prompt people into action, which shifts their mindset and makes it possible for you to grow and scale, and in a way that doesn't cost a lot of marketing dollars necessarily. It's just a reallocation of your time towards making that sale happen as a founder, and really like lead and take the point on biz dev.
Yeah, and I mean, thought leadership as well, I think, is really important to a lot of founders. And I spend a lot of my time doing that. That's why I record this
Right.
podcast and post on LinkedIn and have newsletter and all these different things. And it's also important in this day and age. If you're saving money on marketing, it's even more important, to your point, and more important to be involved in biz dev. Those are all great suggestions. What other tips do you have for companies out there that are trying to be more resilient in this weird economy that we're getting ourselves into?
So it's very normal for founders and leaders who have gotten through the last like few years of growth by keeping their nose to the grindstone and just thinking like, I can outwork this, to try and do that again, when in fact they need to take a break and rest. And this is very counterintuitive because it's not been their recent experience, and they're usually very anxious about leaning back in any way. But it is critical for folks to have more clarity of thought than ever before. It's critical for them to bring their full energy to the table, and that means figuring out how, just like a high-performing athlete that needs to focus on high-quality rest as well as high-quality performance, they've got to think what is what, not how do they like live some like Instagram life of, oh, I wake up early and I took a cold plunge and then I like made this like shake and meditated for 30 minutes. Like, what's one thing you can do to improve your energy level, your rest, or your concentration. And that might be, you know what, maybe it's a 2 minute meditation. Maybe it is like thinking about, okay, I'm going to get to bed before midnight. Maybe it is, you know what, I'm going to go on this walk in the middle of the afternoon, and it's going to be a way for me to process what's happening for 20 to 30 minutes. There needs to be like one new thing usually that allow people to unlock a different level of performance, concentration, um, and the ability to contribute to the business.
Well, and I feel that struggle every day. It feels like myself because in this economy, it seems like a lot of things we're doing just aren't quite working, or they're not working as well as they used to, and it's very frustrating. And keep trying new things, keep trying new things, and at some point in time, to avoid burnout, we need a vacation, but also we need to stop back and rethink the strategy, right? Like we need to step back and actually rethink of what we're doing because we need to make some more strategic changes, and that can be really hard as a leader, right? Because it's like, especially when things aren't going quite as well as you want, you think you're going to outwork the problem, but I think you're right. You really need to outthink the problem as well.
Yeah, that's right. And you feel like you're not working hard enough if you were to take a vacation, go think hard, meditate on problem, or rest. But what we know about the human brain is that if you go and take a walk for 30 minutes and come back, they did this study where they had people do a bunch of creative problem solving exercises. And they had one group of people stay inside and just like do it. And other people they asked to take a walk for 30 minutes and come back. Guess what? The people who had been outside, specifically in nature, they were way more creative. They come up with more ideas. What you need right now at this time when things are not going well is not more of the same, but different. You need different. And so our creativity is there. We're just holding it back because we think if we put in another hour behind our screens, we're going to be better off. When in fact, the taking a walk in nature, taking a really long shower, like things that create sensory deprivation for the mind, actually unlock these things that our brain has been trying to think about, but we just didn't create the space for it to create new connections and synapses. And that is really, really useful. So I'm not suggesting everybody like disappear for 2 weeks to be a hermit or something. I'm saying create like more opportunities to do what you're already good at, what your brain is trying to do for you. Like just give it those opportunities.
Well, and I do want to take a second to remind everybody today's episode is brought to you by Fullscale. If you need to hire software developers, definitely check us out at fullscale.io. Front end, back end, mobile, automated QA, whatever it is you need help with, we can help you out. So let me ask you this. In this recession that we don't know, are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? When or is the market going to crash? When do you think things are going to get better? You think it's going to take electing a different president, or is it going to take some interest rate cuts? Like, what do you think is going to help like get this economy moving a different way?
Yeah, I think we are dealing with economic uncertainty that is derived by, okay, there's a high cost of living. I don't know if electing someone different is a result. I don't think interest rate cuts necessarily make prices like grow more slowly. In fact, it's we know it's the opposite. I think there needs to be a return of confidence in some way that is a combination of economic structural reform as well as just consumer confidence, because we're seeing a new kind of segment of the economy growing faster and particular opportunities. So I'm not a politician and I'm not a professional economist, so I can't predict or provide like a silver bullet of what will change. But I do know that it is right now down to, okay, people are struggling with affordability. We know historically what gets people past that is you need to have wage growth for a long period of time so that wages catch up and exceed the increase in prices. So what increases wage growth? It's individual personal productivity. That could be enabled by technology, can be enabled by education. There's a number of things that can happen. I don't think there's a quick answer to that. It usually takes time, and sometimes measured in years, for
Yeah.
wage growth to allow us to exceed the rise in prices that we've experienced in such a short period of time.
Well, I'm hoping if we can cut interest rates a little bit, maybe that'll give people more confidence. I don't know what else to do in the short term here. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Well, so tell us a little more about your book.
Mhm.
You're writing a book about fundraising.
Yeah.
Tell us more about that.
So I spent the last several years working with founders from around the world who were part of our portfolio at 500 Stars, also known as 500 Global, where I had to help them to raise money, and sometimes in new markets, and sometimes for here in Silicon Valley where maybe they weren't based. And so there's a lot of decoding and explaining things. And the biggest thing that may not be obvious to people is that fundraising is a learned skill. And it is a learned skill much in the same way that while you may not have done before, you can learn to hire, to sell, to do many, many things that maybe wasn't a part of your original like business experience. The thing about fundraising is while it's also a learned skill, it's many different things. And there are four things that I emphasize in the book, The Funding Framework, coming out later this year, which is, first of all, it is certainly about storytelling, and everybody like knows about pitching. But in addition, there's this idea of organization, which is how are you prepared from your cap table all the way down to the org chart and the story you want to tell with your financial model, and things like that that might go into your data room. Third is outreach and treating it like almost an enterprise sales process where you have a list of people who you are reaching out to as opposed to those that you just stumble upon. That aligns thesis of investors to you and your company and the vision you're building towards. And finally, the fourth part is closing. And the part about closing is important because there are so many people who get close to the finish line and then face unnecessary hiccups and stumble and don't cross that finish line or close it without too much like pain and suffering, because closing is as important as initiating the fundraising process. And certainly it is a process, not an accident of how people suddenly raised money.
So in this economic times, how do you see fundraising as different today? Like when should somebody look to do fundraising today in this economy?
So one of the big things that changed quite quickly was instead of telling people, oh yeah, you need 12 to 18 months of fundraising, now you will often hear people say you should raise 24 to 36 months of funding, which sounds great because you need, okay, more runway, it will take more time to grow and scale. What that's doing is it's making founders ask for larger checks in each of the rounds that they are raising that maybe they might not have before if they were just raising, let's say, 18 months of funding. So that's, I think, the first part that has changed is the time horizon. The second thing that has changed is, how people are raising. So they are taking longer to fundraise. It's taking time to show people meaningful lines of progress as opposed to just saying, oh well, we're in this space and we have this momentum and these are who the founders are. Like the time is taking that it is taking is longer for many reasons. One is diligence. There's much more serious diligence, and that's not a bad thing that's happening on the part of investors. And also, people, as always, would like to be the last money in to the round. And what that does is that means that there's a lot of time taken to syndicate rounds. Now, those are some of the mechanical or technical aspects of why it's taking more time. I think at the same time, we're seeing some shifts in terms of investors' attitudes and preferences certainly AI is front and center. Other sectors have become more favored. We've seen like some interest in defense tech and some other fields. Healthcare, it seems to be having a little bit of uptick. Climate, it was super popular a couple years ago, and then now it looks like it is rebounding. And so, like, I think those are some of the other aspects driven perhaps by the macro environment that are changing, like who is getting funded as well.
Well, it seems like as a potential investor, now might be a better time to invest. Like if there's less people investing, the valuation should be lower. It's easier to get in on the deals. There's less competition in the deals, right? Where you go back a couple of years ago, like there was probably a lot of FOMO everywhere, and it was probably hard to get into the deals.
Yeah, I spent a couple of days at a retreat with a number of emerging managers that was organized by a hustle fund called Camp Hustle. And, I think people who are raising new funds now are going to have great vintages. Vintages meaning, of course, the year the fund is raised.
Yeah.
For with the reason that you described, and that is they're deploying capital in exceptional companies that have less competition and perhaps at more reasonable valuations than we've seen in some time.
Well, probably a lot better off than the crazy valuations from a couple of years ago, where a lot of
Yeah.
those companies are taking major write-downs, right? Like this is probably a much better time compared to then.
Yeah, exactly. You're seeing down rounds from a couple years ago that hurts, and it's not just bad for investors. I mean, there are employees who are need to be made right, and because their compensation was tied to a previous
Yeah.
valuation and things like that. So that becomes a huge amount of pressure on the CEOs of those companies to make sure that they're taking care of everybody. They need to think about their people. They need to do this in a way that makes them responsible stewards of the business.
So one of the things I want to talk to you about today was you work with a lot of founders, a lot of entrepreneurs. Is part of your struggle and what you're trying to help them coach through is trying to get them to go from being a founder to actually being a CEO of their company.
Yeah, that's true. And you hit product market fit when you raise a Series A, when you become that CEO of that, that institutionally venture-backed startup. That's really different because now you're growing at yes a very fast rate, but there's just layers of people underneath you. That's I think one of the first things is how do you want to thoughtfully add the layers, right? And then there's three big ways in which it changes. And so the one is communication. And Ben Horowitz writes in Hard Things about the importance of communication architecture in your company. How you communicate will influence the way in which work is done. And so the quality, frequency, the nature of communication isn't something that should just happen accidentally. You should try and state what that looks like. In some companies, there's very advanced cases of like people saying, oh, this is what a memo looks like, and this is how we write, and versus, okay, well, we have a deck culture and like things of that kind. And then those artifacts matter. People's ability to move fast in the direction you want them to do has to do a lot with like, do they get your message? How do they get it? Are you saying the same things in a consistent way? And does your whole team align to it? And so communications is the first part. The second can have a lot to do with how you are going to take yourself out of some roles that maybe you were really critical in before. And so that could have been in sales or marketing or maybe in product. And you still want to touch on those. But in reality, you need to bring people who are even more capable and talented than you and maybe your existing team can be complemented by new skills and new people who come in. So how do you want to like withdraw a little bit from that and create more specialization in the company? which is sometimes hard because you've gotten here so far with a team of like amazing generalists, of people who are scrappy and able to do things as opposed to think, oh, well, what's my lane and how do I specialize my work? And then the third thing is really related to defining your own role then as the CEO, because there's three things that then you are left to own and that only you can own, which is, strategy, culture, and of course, fundraising and making sure that the company is well capitalized. It may be already well funded, but it's certainly your responsibility to own the relationships with investors for the future and with your board. So those are like three of the biggest examples in which people have to suddenly change in a very short time to have a different role now as CEO of a company versus just founder of a small startup.
Well, I had Dale Walden on the podcast, and we were talking about this. About he described it as like when the company is like 0 to 1 million or something like that. Like as a founder, you almost have to be like a dictator and have like absolute control of all the different things and will this company into existence and solve every problem, figure it all out. But then some point in time, you have to let all of that go. Like that has to completely stop, and you have to go the complete opposite way, right? Like you have to delegate everything. And it is like a night and day shift. I feel like somewhere in the middle of that transition.
Yeah, exactly. So that happens, and you have to be choosy about where you start doing it. As I said, there are probably a number of areas you really were involved, and you do. It'll feel weird to just give away your Legos, as they say. It'll be like
Yeah.
weird to just let go. Saying, okay, here's a plan for me to offboard to set the other person up for success is your priority. It's not just saying, "Oh, I found this great person and they're gonna like do it," and you have a responsibility to both hire and prepare and support that person to be as or more successful than you were, owning those particular responsibilities.
So somebody posted on LinkedIn today. It's like as a founder, you need to spend 50% of your time on like recruiting and training, right? You need to spend the other 50% on talking to customers and sales, and then the other 50% on everything else. Does
Right.
that sound about right?
That sounds right. About 150% of the time.
Um, and so a lot of this comes back to aligning your goals and the values of what you're trying to accomplish to make sure you're working on the right things and for the
Mhm.
right reasons, right?
Yeah. This particular economic time, as we've said, can change people's fundamental assumptions. So maybe they're thinking, you know what, I'm starting a company, but maybe it should be bootstrapped. Or maybe they're thinking, we were going to raise a ton of money and grow really fast, but maybe we're good right now. And we want to focus on going deeper in our current verticals. And maybe they're saying, I started this company because I saw what my peers were doing. I always wanted to be a CEO because of like parents or society or something like, but forced me to do it. But at all of those stages, if you are reckoning with why are we doing this? Why am I doing this? And maybe something else is better, you have to know the why behind that. And you can only do that if you've looked closely at your values. And so what are the things that are important? And for some people, it is financial rewards and security. For other people, it is freedom. And for other people, it might be that there's some kind of bigger problem in the world and impact that they want to solve, or some combination of things. And certainly there's an infra list of possible values that people could have. But I really ask people to think and to rethink and revisit. What are the values that they have? What do they think the values are living up to now? And where is that gap? What is that delta? How do we close that? Because that can really inform a lot of choices that they have and help them sit like with a certain rightness with the business and the future that they have as individuals.
And some of us have like entrepreneurial ADHD and it's like a disease and we just can't stop doing this. We don't know why we keep doing this, but we
Yeah,
just keep doing it.
that's right. That's right. We just enjoy this ride so much.
Well, I sold my first company. I was 29, and I probably should have just retired on an island somewhere or something. But instead, I'm still here and I'm still with you doing this,
Yeah,
and I don't know why.
exactly. It is about joy. It is about the joy of building, creating, and that doesn't go away, and you want to feed that.
It's the problem solving part of it, right? Like I
Yeah,
think some of us are driven by the problems. Like we see problems and we think we can help solve them, which is great and also scary, I guess. But yeah. Well, tell us a little more about your coaching that you do at Startup System and how you help other entrepreneurs.
yeah. So the startup system itself is a set of things that are important to every company and that repeat at different stages. So that is funding, that is go to market, that is followed by team building, and finally, what are the metrics and KPIs and things you need to scale, to build, to continue? And then that whole cycle repeats at every stage and with every like different new market or adjacency or vertical, and with the layers and complexities of the team you have. And so I work with founders on a fixed basis, working with just a few at a time, to help get into the choices they're making about the company, and that applies across all of those different areas. And then also do workshops and things to help them with perhaps bringing out the genius of all the people at work. I'm certified working genius facilitator, or it might be a roadmap or strategic planning or things that allow them to align and get people together and on the same page, which I really enjoy.
Well, I'm a huge fan of having mentors, advisors, coaches, all the things. I feel like we all need somebody to talk to and get advice from and share expert opinions. And it sounds like you have a long history of being an entrepreneur and talking to a lot of people. I'm sure you're very valuable to your clients that you work with. And maybe we can have a beer and tears together later. I think I could use
Yeah.
one of those sessions right now in this economy. But for those who are listening, if you do need to hire software developers, check us out at fullscale.io. That might help us out. I might have one less beer tier with Vijay later. Vijay, what else should people know about you or how they can get in contact with you?
I'm pretty accessible on LinkedIn, and also people can find my website at mystartupsystem.com. And there's a way to reach me through that as well.
Awesome. We'll have the link in the show notes for that too. And again, this was Vijay Rajendran. And thank you so much for being on the show today.
My pleasure, Matt. This was a pleasure. And thank you for everything you're doing, hosting this podcast and your newsletter, and making the ecosystem more richer for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.